من هؤلاء السلف؟ هم الصحابة والتابعون لهم بإحسان وأئمة المسلمين كالإمام أحمد بن حنبل ومالك والشافعي وأبي حنيفة وسفيان الثوري والأوزاعي وغيرهم من أئمة المسلمين.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So you remember last week there was this section where Shaykh Rabīʿ رحمه ta'ala quoted the statement of Ibn al-Qayyim رحمه ta'ala from the book al-Fawaid. So that is the section we're going to read through now with the commentary of Shaykh Rabīʿ on that section. The opening line of what Ibn al-Qayyim said was كل من آثر الدنيا من أهل العلم واستحبها, that everybody who gives precedence, priority, preference to this world. Shaykh Rabīʿ said تكلم المؤلف رحمه الله هنا عن الدوافع التي تدفع الإنسان المتعلم إلى عدم تطبيق هذا العلم. That the author Ibn al-Qayyim in this case is talking about the factors that would push away an individual who is learned, but it would push away even that learned individual from implementation and application of his knowledge. And so what are these things that are so enticing that they can drag away even a person who has knowledge and is learned, drag him away so that he no longer implements and applies what he has learned? The Shaykh said they are فَمِنْ ذَلِكَ إِيثَارُ الدُّنْيَا بمعنى ترجيحها على الآخرة فيؤثرها ويحتفي بها ويهتم بها ويجعل الآخرة خلف ظهره. فهذا من الأسباب والدوافع إلى ترك العمل بالعلم وإلى محاربة الحق والعياذ بالله. So giving preference to this dunya, giving preference to this dunya, meaning that you give it more importance than the afterlife. You start focusing on it more than the afterlife, giving it greater weight and importance than the afterlife. And so you become concerned with it, and the afterlife, you put that behind your back, as they say, meaning that you do not give that importance and you do not give that concern. You throw that behind your back, and instead your focus is on this dunya instead. So that is from the means and from those affairs and factors that would cause even a learned person to abandon acting upon his knowledge and even fighting against and opposing the truth. Muharabatul haqq, that he goes out against the truth to defend his dunya and his pursuit of the worldly gains. وهذه قاعدة, and this principle that Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, كل من آثر الدنيا من أهل العلم واستحبها فلا بد أن يقول على الله غير الحق في فتواه وحكمه وفي خبره وإلزامه. So anyone who gives precedence and preference to this dunya from the people of knowledge, and they find it beloved to them, then no doubt they are going to end up saying upon Allah that which is contrary to the truth in their fatwa that they give, in their verdicts that they give, and in their rulings that they make, and in what they inform of and what they expect people to stick to. Then those rulings and verdicts of theirs, they will be in opposition to the truth. They will end up contrary to the truth if their goal and desire has become pursuit of the worldly gains and benefits. Shaykh Rabīʿ says, يخالف الحق في كل هذه الأمور. In all of these things, giving his verdicts, giving his rulings, etc., he opposes the truth in that. وإذا فعل ذلك هلك والعياذ بالله. And if that's what he does, that's how he behaves, then he is going to be destroyed, he will be ruined. فإذا أفتى قال غير الحق لأنه آثر الدنيا على الآخرة. So when he gives a fatwa, when he gives some verdict, then you see that he opposes the truth because he is giving preference to the worldly gain over the afterlife. فإما أن يرتشي أو يطلب بهذا الأمر الرياسة أو غيرها من المطامع الدنيوية التي تدفعه إلى كراهية الحق ومخالفته والقول بغيره. So that kind of person who is chasing after the dunya, then when he speaks, even if he is learned, then in what he says will oppose the truth, and so much so that maybe even it could be that money and finances become involved, bribes maybe become involved, and maybe he is seeking authority and leadership and position, or other than that from the worldly gains, which push him to hating the truth and opposing it and speaking in opposition to it. And that is the kind of thing that seems to describe perfectly the people of bid'ah, some of the people of innovation, some of their leaders. You see the kinds of fatwas they give, the kind of fatwa you hear from them. It is permissible to take loans with interest. It is permissible to take mortgages with interest. What can you do? You live in that country. All these kinds of justifications they'll bring out. It is permissible to shake the hand of a woman. It is permissible to watch dramas on TV and serials. All of these kinds of things heard from the Ikhwanis and their likes. All of these fatwa are based upon what? They are not based upon the religion. They are not based upon evidence. They are based upon their desires. They have their ulterior motives, their goals, their objectives, chasing after the dunya, chasing after the numbers. And that is the way of their da'wah. The way of the da'wah of the Ikhwanis and those who oppose the methodology of Ahl Sunnah. It is about gathering the masses, even if upon falsehood. That's why their da'wah never goes into anything that is for them controversial. For them. So even affairs of aqidah for them are controversial, because they know there are so many people with different aqidah. This one here believes in the names and attributes, that one doesn't. That one believes in some of the asma wa sifat and he rejects others. That one believes in this, that one believes in that. This one rejects the decree, this one rejects iman and actions. Various things they know that the people are going to be upon differences, so they never give lectures on details of those affairs. Have you ever seen al-Maghrib or any of those kinds of ikhwanis and their likes give lectures in their big conferences they do and tickets they sell and big theaters, give lectures on details of aqidah, on details of al-asma wa sifat, on details of iman? They cannot. Half of their stadium, 3/4 of their stadium will walk out. So for them it is the mass to amass the numbers, to gather the numbers. And as they say, when they talk about unity, and they say وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, cling on to the rope of Allah, all of you united together. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, the believers are brothers. What do they say? They say, that's it. You say La ilaha illallah. Yes, I say La ilaha illallah. We are united. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. You say La ilaha illallah, I say La ilaha illallah. We are brothers together. And that's it. It doesn't matter if you believe that some of the companions were kuffar. It doesn't matter if you lie upon the names and attributes of Allah, rejecting them and denying them. Doesn't matter. You say La ilaha illallah, so do I. We're united. That is their idea of unity. Their idea of unity is based upon the minimum, which is the shahada. Every mubtadi' will say the shahada. Go to any mubtadi', say to him, do you believe in La ilaha illallah? Of course they will say to you, yes. Go to the khariji, go to the tablighi, go to any of them. Do you believe in the shahada? Of course. La ilaha illallah. So for these people, that is the minimum. As long as you say the shahada, that's it. That is their boundary or their bar for unity. And we know that's not how it works. We know that's not how unity works. That is not what Allah commanded us with. That is not the meaning of وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. You have to have unity upon the habl of Allah. And what is that rope of Allah? That is the Quran, that is the Sunnah, that is the manhaj and the methodology of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But people who have worldly goals to look after, they have, as it says here, مطامع دنيوية, then they will not be able to speak the truth clear. They will not, because they have to look after the politics. They have to look after their people here and look after their people there. And they fear losing these ones and losing those ones and losing that one. So then politics plays a role in what they say and what they do. And if that's how it's going to be, they are never going to be able to speak the pure haqq, the pure truth, because they always have to keep looking after their interests. Looking after their interests here, looking after their interests there. Then how can they speak the truth? So here that's what he mentions. The one who gives precedence and preference to the world, to the dunya and goals and objectives in the dunya, that kind of person, that kind of student of knowledge or scholar or learned one is not going to be able to speak the pure truth. If anything, as he mentions here, he will oppose it. And he will say that which is against the truth, against the haqq. فَإِنْ أَفْتَى أَفْتَى بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَإِنْ حَكَمَ فَكَذَلِكَ. So when those kinds of people give fatwas, they give fatwas against the truth, not based upon evidences. And if they give a ruling, they give rulings against the truth. وَإِنْ أَخْبَرَ يُخْبِرُ عَنِ اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. And when they inform you and give you knowledge or details regarding Allah, they give you lies against Allah. فَإِمَّا أَنْ يَأْتِيَ بِأَحَادِيثٍ مَوْضُوعَةٍ أَوْ يَفْتَرِي عَلَى اللَّهِ وَيُحَرِّفْ آيَاتِهِ. So either they will bring to you fabricated narrations, perhaps fabricated hadith that they spread, or they will fabricate upon Allah and distort the ayat to fulfill their goals and desires of what they hope to achieve. وهذا موجود كما هو الحال في أهل الرفض وأهل التصوف وأهل الكلام وأهل البدع قاطبة. And as Shaykh Rabīʿ mentions, that situation we've been talking about right now, it exists, absolutely exists amongst all of these different groups of innovation, Ahlul Bid'ah, from those who are upon the way of the Rāfidah or the Sufis, or those upon the rhetoric, the names and attributes and affairs of that nature, the philosophers who went astray in those matters. All of these different types of the people of innovation, they will not be able to speak the truth because of their other worldly interests that they have. ولهذا قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: وإن هذه الأمة ستفترق على 73 فرقة أو ملة، يعني الأهواء كلها في النار إلا واحدة. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this ummah, the Muslims, the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will split up into 73 sects, all of them in the fire except one. As Shaykh Rabīʿ said, يعني الأهواء, that they will split up into these 73 sects of desires, each one of them following their desires in their affair. And that is what led them astray. This group following its desires on such and such, that one following its desires on such and such. And so they all end up astray. You look at the Khawarij from the early times, from the times of the Salaf, the Khawarij who emerged upon their desires, following their desires. The Azariqa, following their desires. They came to test the companions. What do you say about Abu Bakr and Uthman? As soon as they found out that they are with Abu Bakr and Uthman, they turned their backs on them. Go, in that case, we're not with you. Turned their backs on them and went following their desires. This is the way of the people of innovation. They are upon a following of their desires, not the following of the truth in its purity. فما الذي يجعله يصر على البدعة طول حياته ولا يرجع إلى الحق إلا أنه اتبع هواه وآثر دنياه على أخراه وحرص على الرئاسة وعلى حب المال فيوقعه ذلك في هذه المهالك والعياذ بالله. So what is it that causes this person to persist? ما الذي يجعله يصر على البدعة? What makes him persist and carry on upon bid'ah? Somebody now who falls into innovation, what is it that causes him to continue and persist upon that innovation? All his life perhaps, and he never comes back to the truth. It is because that innovation he is upon, it is an application and implementation of his desires. And so he remains with his desires for the whole length of his life and gives precedence to this dunya and what he receives, priority over the afterlife, and he strives for leadership, authority, control, and for the love of gathering wealth. So all of that causes him to fall into destruction. And refuge is sought with Allah. فَتَرَاهُ طُولَ عُمْرِهِ مُصِرًّا عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ إِمَامًا فِيهِ وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ يحمل وزره وأوزار من وراءه ومن تأسى به إلى يوم القيامة. So you see some of these people, their whole life persistent upon their falsehood, as leaders calling to that falsehood their whole lives. And so they carry their own sins, and for those who then follow them and emulate them up until the day of judgment. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, من سن سنة في الإسلام حسنة فله أجرها وأجر من عمل بها إلى يوم القيامة ومن سن في الإسلام سنة سيئة فعليه وزرها ووزر من عمل بها إلى يوم القيامة. أخرجه مسلم من حديث جرير. In this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whomsoever brings about a good sunnah into Islam, meaning revives a sunnah amongst the people, then for him is the reward of that, and for all of those who then implement that after him. The one who revives a sunnah, brings back a sunnah that was lost and unknown to the people, then for him is the reward of that, and the reward of those who act upon that till the day of judgment. But likewise, whomsoever brings about an evil practice in Islam, some bid'ah, then upon him is that evil, upon him is that sin, and of all of those who act upon that till the day of judgment. فَيَحْمِلْ أَوْزَارَهُ وَأَوْزَارَ الَّذِينَ يُضِلُّهُمْ عِيَاذًا بِاللَّهِ. So he carries the burden of that, the sin and the wrong of that upon himself, and of those whom he misguided. That's why in the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, when she mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. That whoever brings about a new innovation, invents some new innovation into our religion, then it will be rejected. فهو رد أي مردود على صاحبه لا يقبل منه. So a person now doing bid'ah might say, but I didn't invent this bid'ah. The hadith says, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا. من أحدث. Maybe a person doing the bid'ah says, I didn't bring this innovation, I didn't make this innovation, I'm just following so and so. I'm just following so and so, I didn't do it. But then that's why you have the other riwayah, من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. Whoever does an action that is not from our religion, it will be rejected. So in the second narration it tells you, whoever does the action, regardless of whether he invented it himself or not, as long as he's doing that action, man amila, who's doing it, not man ahdatha. So man ahdatha, and also man amila, whoever does that action imitating and following the others upon that misguidance, then upon them it will be rejected, their actions rejected and not accepted from them. So it is a calamity for those who invent these misguidances and misguide others, but then those who are misguided themselves are in calamity for that too. And the ones who did that misguidance to them, they face further consequences for all of those others they misguided. The Shaykh says then, فَلَوْ ذَهَبْنَا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِ الطُّرُقِ الصُّوفِيَّةِ. ونظرنا كيف أنهم أهلكوا أنفسهم وأهلكوا الناس بالعقائد الفاسدة والمناهج الضالة والأوراد الشركية والتعلق بالقبور فهؤلاء يقولون غير الحق ويتعمدون ذلك. The Shaykh says, if we were to go now and have a look at the Sufis, the different sects of the Sufis, and we see how they have ruined and destroyed themselves, and they have ruined and destroyed the other people upon their false and corrupt creed and their misguided methodologies and their types of du'as and dhikr that they do, which is upon shirk, and their connection to the graves, how they are clinging on to graves, and they say, they speak with that which is in opposition to the truth intentionally. يقولون غير الحق ويتعمدون ذلك. They speak in opposition to the truth and they intend that. وكثير منهم يعرف الحق من كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Many of them, they know the truth from the book of Allah and His Sunnah, they know. ولكن حرصه على الدنيا وعلى المناصب والرئاسة وما شاكل ذلك يجعله لا يتزحزح عن موقعه ومكانته التي أحله الشيطان فيها وزينها له والعياذ بالله. But even though some of them, they know the truth, they speak in opposition to it because of their fervent desire, their striving and desire and want for the world and for positions and for leadership and control and other affairs of that nature. Then because of that, they do not move away from their position that they are in, and they do not move away from that position that the shaitan has also embedded himself into and beautified for them. And that is exactly what you see from the Sufis. The Sufis, that is exactly what you see from them. When the Sufis have their gatherings in mosques or in halls that they hire out, they have their gatherings and they do their dancing and they do their singing. And then one of the common features of these gatherings of theirs is that the people, for the love of this great Imam of theirs, in these gatherings of dancing and music and things, they start throwing. What do they throw at their Imams? Money. And not just £1 coins or £2 coins. That will hurt the Imam. They throw paper. £5 notes, £10 notes, £20 notes, £50 notes. Throwing that money. And the Imam, he is sat there and they're singing and they're dancing and they're throwing the money. And you see some of these videos on YouTube and places, notes everywhere flying around him. £20 notes and £50 notes, and people coming and throwing, people squeezing, move, I want to throw mine. I need to throw my £50, throwing it down, throwing it down. So these kinds of Sufis, are they going to change what they say? MashaAllah, make 10,000 in one night? Are they going to change and speak the truth now, even if they know it? When they have that position and they have that status and they have all of this money coming in, notes being thrown at them, they will not change their statements. They will not speak the truth when they have that. But it's only us, masakin. We come here, empty pockets. We go home, empty pockets. Not a single note here. Every time you go with nothing. But the Sufis, that is the positions they have. And now this is what the Shaykh is talking about. حرصه على الدنيا وعلى المناصب والرئاسة وما شاكل ذلك يجعله لا يتزحزح عن موقعه. That position and that authority and this money, then he's going to stay quiet and carry on with it, even if he knows that's not right and that's not right. They continue and they have such station, the Sufis especially amongst their blind followers. Their blind followers believe some of their Sufi Imams, they can read between the lines of the Quran. The secrets of the Quran, the Sufi Imams know. And the rest do not know. Only the Sufi Imams know the secrets of the Quran in between the ayat. And some of the masakeen, they go to their Sufi Imams when they cannot have a baby, for example. So the Imam, and this is upon their levels of misguidance, the Imam will then rub them. He will rub perhaps the woman and make some dua or say something, you will have a child now, and do this and rub and do that. And this is what they do. They believe the Sufi Imams have these abilities. You read the books of the Sufis and the kinds of stories they mention in their books. They say there was once a famous poet, Sha'ir, famous poet, and this was after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. He wrote some poetry praising the Prophet ﷺ, showing his love for the Prophet ﷺ. Some poetry. He wrote some poem. So then they say this was after the death of the Prophet. They say then one day this Sha'ir, he was from Sham somewhere, one day he went to al-Madinah, and he went to al-Masjid al-Nabawi, and he went to the grave of the Prophet to give salam. And when he went there, this is what they say in their books, in the Sufi books. This poet was a big Sufi of theirs. When he went there, they say in their books, he went to give salam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came out of his grave and said to this man, I had to come out and give you salam because of that beautiful poetry you wrote about me. And so they say he came out and gave salam to this man, said, I had to come out for you and give you salam for that beautiful poetry. Absolute lies. Absolute lies from the beginning to the end. There used to be some brothers with us. One brother at the University of Medina, his upbringing was with the Sufis. His upbringing had been with the Sufis. He told us that they used to say to him in the mosques where he used to go, that there is a great Sufi Imam of ours, and he is a great, great Imam. He lives in the sea, under the sea, in, you know, those pearls, those shells, the clamps, when they open, there's a pearl inside. They say there's a big one of those, a massive one under the sea. He lives inside there. Big Sufi Imam of ours, he lives in one of those like that. These are in their books, and these are the stories they mention. There's another story one time, there's so many, we could do it, we're going to carry on forever. There's another one they mentioned one time, that some of the followers of this great Sufi Imam, some of his students were on a boat somewhere once, going in the sea fishing or traveling or something. They were on a boat somewhere, and a big storm came, and they got into big trouble in the sea, and they were going to sink. Their boat was going to go down, and so they started making calls, not to Allah, but to their Sufi Imam, to their Shaykh. Shaykhana, our Imam, this and that, and they started calling out to him. They're out in the sea somewhere. Their Shaykh is out at home somewhere, and they begin calling out to him because they're in trouble and their ship is going to sink. That's not even the worst part. They say then, the Sufi Imam, he's sitting at home, he hears their cries, hears them calling out to him. This is in their books. Hears them calling out to him. And so he, from his house, maybe who knows, 20, 30, 50 miles from the beach, who knows where he lived. From his house, they say, he stretched out his arm all the way, miles and miles, wherever it was, to the sea. And he put his hand under the boat and he brought them out. But we're not finished yet. The best part is, so if you have a bowl of water now, imagine, or the sea or a bowl of water, if I put my hand in to get something out, what's going to happen to my thobe here? It's going to get wet, because if I put my hand into a bath full of water, or a lake or the sea to get something out like that, this part is going to get wet. They say from the miracles of the Imam, he pulled out that boat and even his sleeve did not get wet. Even his sleeve did not get wet. Miracles of the Imam. He pulled it out without getting his clothes dirty, without getting his clothes wet. He didn't even get wet. These are the stories. Now these kinds of Sufis, they have these blind followers. If you look at al-Usul al-Sittah, for example, right at the last bit of al-Usul al-Sittah of Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, does he not mention about one of the doubts those kinds of innovators bring? One of their doubts is that you common people, the awam, you cannot understand the Quran and the Sunnah. Only us, the big Imams, we understand. So you just be quiet and stay with us. And that's why they say for the Sufi followers with the Imams, the way that you're supposed to behave, the way the followers are supposed to behave with the Imam is like they give the example of a dead body. When a person dies, other Muslims come and wash the body. Those other Muslims, when they come and wash the body, they're gonna pick up his arm, they're gonna pick up his other arm, they're gonna maybe move his head. The body has any control? No, it's dead. The ones who are washing him, they are moving the body everywhere, this way, that way, whichever way they move it, that's where the body goes. They say, be like that. Be like a corpse in front of your Imam. Whatever he says, you do exactly like that. It's like in English we say now, when someone says to you, jump, just say, how high? Don't say, jump, why? Why do I have to jump? No, your Imam says jump, you say, khalas, how high? 1 meter, 2 meter, tell me, I'll do it now. This is how they behave. So now when they have these kinds of positions, this is what the Shaykh is saying. They have this dunya like this. They walk around, you see the YouTube videos and these things, they're walking around as though people are behaving with them if they are a prophet. As though they are like some kind of prophet. So they are not going to leave their positions now, they'll stay like that. They'll accept all of the notes and they'll accept everything else and they'll accept the cars. The cars. In Nelson, where I live, a big Sufi Imam, he was selling his car. And the car itself, some Mercedes or BMW or something, was worth maybe 2,000-3,000 pounds, old car. But this was being advertised maybe 20,000 or something. This is the car that the Imam sat in. This is the Imam's car that we used to drive him to the mosque. So they're expecting one of their followers to pay maybe 15,000-20,000 for a car that's worth 2,000. Worse than that, I've seen myself these adverts and things, some Sufis selling little bottles of water, like 200 ml or something, small bottles of water, for like 20 pounds for this little bottle, 50 pounds for this 200 ml bottle of water. Why? They said this water was collected from when the Imam was making wudu. The Imam was making wudu, we collected the water from there. This is that water, 50 pounds a bottle. And this is what they do. So now these Imams, who knows, maybe the Imam takes a cut and he has a business with them, 30 pounds he says, who knows? So now these kinds of things, that is what the Shaykh is saying. حرصه على الدنيا وعلى المناصب والرئاسة ومشاكل ذلك يجعله لا يتزحزح عن موقعه. He's not going to budge. He's not going to budge now when he's got all that in the dunya at his feet. Blind followers praising him and raising him in this way. He's not going to move. He's not going to change. He's not going to speak the truth. He'll stay quiet and carry on with that life. That is the deception of the shaitan. When a person gives priority and precedence to the dunya, to followers, to praise, to position, to rulership, then you're not going to be able to speak the truth. When politics get involved, your hands become tied. You're not going to speak the truth then. يذكر ابن القيم رحمه الله سبب مخالفة العالم للحق في فتواه وحكمه وخبره وإلزامه فيقول: لأن أحكام الرب سبحانه كثيرا ما تأتي على خلاف أغراض الناس، ولا سيما أهل الرياسة والذين يتبعون الشبهات فإنهم لا تتم لهم أغراضهم إلا بمخالفة الحق ودفعه كثيرا. Ibn al-Qayyim then explains, but why do these worldly pursuits prevent them from speaking the truth? What is the cause behind it? He says it is because the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala often they are in contradiction to the goals and objectives and desires of what people wish to achieve in this dunya. They are in opposition to that, especially those who are after the leadership and authority to be the heads and be in control. For those types of individuals and those who are following their desires, their doubts, those who are following doubts, then for those individuals, their pursuits cannot be actualized, cannot be fulfilled, except بمخالفة الحق, except by opposing the truth, except by opposing what Allah and the Messenger have given to us. لأن الجنة, because paradise is surrounded by what? حفت بالمكاره. It is surrounded by that which the soul dislikes, that which is difficult for us and disliked to the soul. وَالنَّارِ, but as for the hellfire, that is surrounded by الشهوات, the hellfire surrounded by the desires, making it easy for the people to go to those desires. The soul is attracted to those desires. But the paradise surrounded by the difficulties, the burdens, the hardships, and the soul is not inclined to those affairs. But that is the reality of the test in this world. That is the test. The test is who will be able to leave what the soul desires and implement what is more difficult and burdensome upon them to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَكَثِيرٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَمِيلُونَ إِلَى الشَّهَوَاتِ. So many people, they lean towards the desires. وَالشَّهَوَاتِ وَحُبُّ الرِّيَاسَاتِ تَأْتِي مُنَافِيَةً لِلْحَقِّ مُخَالِفَةً لَهُ. So desires and love of leadership and authority, they come contrary to the truth, in opposition to the truth, negatory against the truth, and in opposition to it. فحب الشهوات من الباطل والحرص على الرئاسات والتفاني فيها باطل فهناك معارضة ومصادمة بين الحق والباطل. So loving your desires and chasing after those desires, that is from falsehood, and chasing after leadership and authority, that is from falsehood. There is a clear opposition and contradiction between love of leadership, authority, desires of this world, and the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to implement in the Quran and the Sunnah. فانظروا إلى هؤلاء الذين ينافسون على الكراسي في الانتخابات ويدفعون الملايين للوصول إليها وكم يكذبون ويلبسون على الناس. The Shaykh says, look at these like politicians these days who compete for their positions, compete for their seats in the council, in the parliament, those kind of things. Look at how they compete in those elections and they spend millions. That's what it costs. When they do these elections, they spend millions of pounds for the election to be prime minister, the election to be president. They spend millions of pounds on their campaign, on posters, on this, on that, on visiting, on doing all these things. millions of pounds for those seats, and they lie. They lie. They are liars in what they say, and they deceive the people. And that's one of the reasons why these methodologies of democracy are incorrect and false. فطرق الروافض والصوفية والجهمية والمعتزلة والأحزاب الضالة الآن في هذا العصر كلهم أهلكهم الحرص على الدنيا واتباع الشهوات وحب المناصب. So all of these different groups, the Rafida, the Sufiya, the Jahmiya, the Mu'tazila, and all of the misguided sects today, in our time, the Shaykh says, all of them were destroyed due to their pursuit of the dunya. They were all destroyed because of their pursuit of chairs, of rank, of station, of dunya, and of following their desires. ويلبسون على الناس, and they deceive and con the people. لأن باطلهم لا يمشي إلا إذا ألبسوه لباس الحق. Because those kinds of people, their falsehood would not be acceptable, and it wouldn't work unless they cover it up with the falsehood of truth. They cover up their deceptions with truth, and inside it's actually deception and lies covered up and cloaked up in these falsehoods to convince the people and deceive the people. وهذا من صفات أعداء الله اليهود والنصارى. And that is from the characteristics of the enemies of Allah, the Jews and the Christians. ورؤساء النصارى في غاية الخبث. And the heads of the Christians, they are at the absolute pinnacle and peak of that disgrace and evil that they are in. وقد يكون فيهم من هو أخبث من اليهود. And there may well be those who are even worse than them from the Jews. وقد يكون فيهم زنادقة وكما أن في رؤوس الروافض زنادقة وفي رؤوس الصوفية زنادقة فعلا. And there may well even be from among them those who are in reality disbelievers. In reality they are kuffar. And you might find that in the ranks of the Rafida, in the ranks of the Sufis. In reality what they are upon is actually in opposition to Islam altogether. لذلك تجد عند صوفية أنهم يقولون بالحلول وحدة الوجود. So the Sufis, for example, one of their beliefs they talk about is how the creator and the creation are all intertwined. The creator and the creation are all intertwined. The creator and the creation are one. And we know that is complete falsehood. Rather, the creator, Allah, is separate from the creation, is above the creation, ba'inun minhu, separate and distinct from this creation, not as they say, all of the creator and the creation are intertwined, unified, they are one. The creator is the creation is the creator. That is falsehood. فهذه زندقة من أين جاءت؟ من الزنادقة. وكثير من رؤساء الصوفية أخذوا الزندقة من باطنية الروافض فأهلكوا أنفسهم وأهلكوا الكثير من الناس ونشروا البدع والضلالات. وكثير منهم قد يعرف الحق ولكن حرصه على الرياسة والمال جعله يتفانى في نصرة الباطل ومقاومة الحق ورده. So this is the same as what the Shaykh mentioned earlier. Because of their pursuit of worldly affairs, of position, of status, of wealth, then they continue upon that falsehood in opposition to the truth, and they reject the truth. فتجردوا لله وتعلموا العلم لوجهه. نعم فتجردوا لله وتعلموا العلم لوجهه وأخلصوا له وآثروا الآخرة على الدنيا. Then the Shaykh he says, تَجَرَّدُوا لِلَّهِ وَتَعَلَّمُوا الْعِلْمَ لِوَجْهِهِ, that make yourselves pure and sincere for Allah alone, and seek the knowledge for Him alone. وَأَخْلِصُوا لَهُ, and be sincere to Him. وَآثِرُوا الْآخِرَةَ عَلَى الدُّنْيَا, and give priority and preference to the afterlife over this world. وَإِلَّا يَكُونُ الْعِلْمُ حُجَّةً عَلَيْكُمْ وَسَبَبًا فِي هَلَاكِكُمْ, otherwise this knowledge will be an evidence against you, and it will be a cause for your destruction and a cause for your ruin if you do not implement what you've learned in your knowledge. If you don't implement that, and instead your worldly goals and pursuits, your worldly positions, you're worried about them, your worldly rank and station, you're worried about that, that is what causes you to behave upon falsehood. And what kind of a man is that? A man of weakness who has no bravery, a man of weakness, feebleness under the feet of others. That is not the characteristic that the Messenger was upon. The Messenger was upon bravery and courage, bold, and he used to seek refuge from cowardice. Seek refuge from cowardice. Bravery is what is required of an individual, not to be fallen into the dunya and worldly pursuits and wealth that then prevents you from speaking the truth, prevents you from speaking the haqq, prevents you from maintaining and remaining upon the positions of haqq. Then he goes on to the next section, which will begin the next time. ثم ساق المؤلف رحمه الله بعض الآيات في الذين لا يعملون بالعلم كقوله تعالى فخلف من بعدهم خلف ورثوا الكتاب. We'll get to this section next time about some of the ayat and the examples of those who did not act upon their knowledge. And then when we finish that, it'll be the next chapter we'll start, which is again from some of the statements of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, from his book al-Fawaid. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.